barking. Be forewarned, you might hear a dog barking. There's a dog going nuts. You might hear it. I don't know if you would. I'm waiting for everything to wake up. This is that awkward moment where I got to make sure everything's awake as everybody loads in on this lovely Monday, which it's MMT Monday, by the way. We'll get to that in just a second. All right, YouTube, you awake? YouTube is awake. Rockfin was awake first, but it's not a competition. Or is it? I don't know. Maybe it kind of is. What's up, everybody? Lucy just jumped down. She's like, all right, the show's starting. I don't get your unlimited attention now. I'm out of here. Lucy just literally, I don't know if you guys could see it, but she just jumped off my lap and just bounced. But what are you going to do? What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Happy Monday. Shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. Our friends over at Indie Left. Indie Left is the place to find all the content creators and streamers you know and love. What they do is they curate a list for you. They update it twice a day. So it's just a nice little one-stop shop to find out everything they got going on and to subscribe to their Discord. Check them out at independentleft.media. Folks, it's that time where we do an MMT Monday. And today we're going to be talking about national debt and the national debt ceiling. And we're also going to tell you very briefly what exactly MMT is, because maybe this is your first MMT Monday. And joining me on this endeavor is my MMT dealer. He deals me MMT. He's like, I got some MMT for you. You paying? You got the Benjamins, baby? I got some MMT if you need it. But please welcome to the show, back to the show, because he's here every month. Not the bad guy, the different guy, the good guy, Mr. Jeff Epstein. What's up, buddy?
How are you, Ron? Good to see you. Good to see
you. So let's get right into it. This is like our fourth, I think, MMT Monday.
Yes. So kind of 3.5. Kind of 3.5.
Yeah. You there you go. Now you're right in the middle. You got it.
Geez, come on.
A little more.
Right.
There
you go. All right.
There you go. All right. Yeah, you're solid. Nice t-shirt, by the way.
Thank you. Yes. Not sure where I got it, but it was I don't know, attracted me.
That is a lovely shirt. And for anyone else who's thinking that's a lovely shirt, you can pick yours up at ronplacone.com. You can grab one of those shirts right now with and you can get a free button while supplies last. And I'm actually almost out of buttons. So if you want a free button with a t-shirt order, don't wait. Order it now at ronplacone.com.
We were supposed to have seen each other 2 days ago.
I know. That's depressing. That's bittersweet. Yeah, it's still sad whenever I think about it, man.
This is a consolation prize.
Yeah, no. We could have done this anyway. We could have done this like in New York. We're supposed to have a show in New York City tonight.
No.
You could have taken the train to New York and we could have chatted about MMT somewhere before the show in New York.
Cool.
Oh, now I'm sad.
MMT and beer. MMT over a beer.
Why not? I
don't know.
Think that's in the that could actually be a good thing for your movement, man. I know that one of the things in the municipal, I'm a big municipal broadband guy. One of the things that they've been trying to launch with that is a thing called Broadband and Brews, where you just kind of get people in the community to have beers together and you talk to them about, hey, this is why municipal broadband's a really good thing. Because, it's not the most obvious issue on the front of people's minds, which I get. But, you have a couple beers and you chat about it and you can make it sexier, I suppose.
Every neoliberal myth you have to drink, everyone's dead from liver poisoning within 10 minutes.
Exactly. So let's get into this week's topic. We are going to talk about national debt and the national debt ceiling, which you've been hearing a lot about in the news lately. Everybody's like, the debt ceiling, we got to do something, or the government's going to shut down, and this debt ceiling is really important. Well, Jeff, let's first of all, I actually forgot our intro here. Apologies. Do that elevator pitch, Jeff, on what is MMT.
Yes, and I know this always makes you nervous, but I will make it short. MMT is an accurate map of the economy.
No. Okay, that's it.
So it's an accurate map of the economy, and with an accurate map, you can understand the world as it is. You can choose where you want to go, and then know what to expect along the way. You have a fake map, you will wander around aimlessly, even though you think you're on the right path. MMT is an accurate map of the economy. Where to go and how to get there is up to you.
All right. I like that one. This is every week we do, or every month we do a different elevator pitch. And it's, that's a fun one, man. I think that one's a keeper.
All right. Good. Good.
So MMT is it stands for modern monetary theory. For anyone, if this is totally your first time, it stands for modern monetary theory. A great buddy book for this is The Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton, and it
Yes.
basically breaks down why a lot of the things that we're taught about debt and about the way money works in our world is not entirely accurate, and
Mm,
why, as a currency creator, we can do a lot more than what we're doing to help regular people instead of just helping Wall Street. So,
yes.
Jeff, our topic this week is the national debt ceiling that everyone's so, oh my God, the
The jazz
government
hands of
might
fear.
shut down. What's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen? So, Jeff, why is that kind of sort of bullshit?
Okay, can I give a little bit of background for the entire conversation? Just
Sure.
take a minute for that. So it is important, and it's very important to end on mint the coin, to get a good, decent chunk at the end regarding mint the coin, which is very important. National debt versus personal debt. Personal debt is when I go to a bank, I make a loan. They give me a loan, and I am in debt. As soon as I get that money, I am in debt for all of that money plus interest.
Right.
I am not out of debt until all of that is paid back. So if I have money from a bank, I am in debt by definition. That's an inherent characteristic of a bank loan. There are two critical qualities of a bank loan. Personal debt. Number one, borrower is the bank. The bank is the lender. I am the borrower. There is a higher authority. In that situation, there's a government. There's a higher authority. Number two is that the borrower has no power compared to the lender. There is a massive power imbalance. If I don't pay back my loan, they will destroy me. I have no chance. There is a massive power imbalance between the borrower and the lender. Okay.
Can I add something to that real quick?
Sure.
Because this is something that I read in Debt by David Graeber, which is another excellent book to
Very
read
important.
in this topic. It is a very, very dense book. It is a very long book, and you'll find yourself revisiting things. And it's one of those books you should probably read more than once. And it's no light reading, but it is. There's so much information in there where you're just kind of thinking, "Oh wow, I never thought of it this way." And one of the first things he brings up, and it was one of the first like holy shit moments I had, was he talks about how there's always this moral obligation between the the lender and the person in debt, but it always only goes one way.
Yep.
There's never like it's never reciprocated where it's like, well, wait, this external factor happened and now this debt can't be repaid. So what do we do? That's never the case. It's always one way. It's always the Lannister pays their debt, or in this case, usually you're not a Lannister, you're someone powerless. You know, you pay your debt. That's your moral obligation. Pay your tithings. Give to Caesar what is Caesar, etc., etc. But it's
Jesus died for your sins.
It was his debt.
Yeah, Jesus died for your sins. You're in debt to Jesus before you were even born.
Jesus, because he's dead. You're in debt to him. Shame.
Where's the bell? So the bank gets all of the benefits. The borrower gets all of the penalties. So the bank has no investment in your loan. The bank has no incentive to be judicious with who it lends to and what it lends for. There's no incentive to keep track of how you're doing because it has no penalties. There's an Islamic concept called musharka, which is that banks have like whatever, a 20% interest that they lose 20% if they do a loan. So that makes them very careful of who they give loans to, and they have a relationship with the borrower because they will lose out if you fail to pay your loan. That's not the case in America. The lenders get all the benefits. They get the house. If you can't pay back, the borrower gets all of the penalties. So if I may I'll continue with the summary, which is bank debt, personal debt is scary. It's scary. From our point of view. Now there's national debt. National debt. The United States borrows from China, borrows its own money that it can create, but it borrows its own money from China. And so we have to pay back China, because if we don't pay back China, then it'll be economic Armageddon and there'll be a war and whatever, blah, blah, blah. There is no higher authority in that relationship. China and the United States, there is no higher authority. There's no world government. There's no universe government. The Decepticons and outer space have nothing to do with this. And it also, the borrower and lender, supposing, China is the lender, so-called, and the United States is the borrower. There is no power imbalance between them. They are roughly the same power. So China wants their money back and we don't pay it back. Well, China's going to come and take our stuff. They're going to repossess the UN or whatever. They're going to be met with the US military. That's not how it works. So the point is to compare national debt to personal debt is wrong. It makes no sense. And so now we go on to the debt ceiling and the national debt. Go on to that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the debt ceiling says we can't have more than X. We can't have more than X. Why? Because the lawmakers who make the law made a law that says we can't have national debt more than X. Why? Because we can't pay it back. We create money. There's no higher authority. There's no one else in the world that can create it. So they who create the law have made a law that says the national debt can't be above whatever number they make. But notice that whenever we get close to it, up until that.
Yeah, all of a sudden it can go higher.
All of a sudden it changes.
Man, wouldn't that be the
but up until that.
Wouldn't that be the $1 million question to ask Kristen Sinema in a bathroom stall?
Yeah.
Be like, why? Why is that the number? Why is that? Yep. Why can't we go higher? We create the currency. We're a currency creator, right? Not a currency user.
Correct. Some countries are currency users as well. For less powerful countries, take out loans from the U.S. So they're essentially a currency user, just like you and me, to an extent. Mm-hmm. And that's a big factor with Fidel Kaboub. That's a big factor of how powerful countries coerce less powerful countries. But in the US and the UK and Australia and so on is different. So they create a law because they are the ones who create a law. If you create laws, you're the only one in the world that can create a law and delete laws. And for whatever reason, they make this the law. If you create the law, it is by definition, laws are self-imposed. But every moment up until we reach that deadline of, we're going to violate the debt ceiling, every moment up until then, they scare. Oh, the debt ceiling. Oh, we must be afraid of the debt ceiling. We can't do stuff for poor people because of the debt ceiling. And then the law changes as soon as we reach it. From my point of view, that is less like a law and more like a New Year's resolution.
Oh.
It's a New Year's resolution.
Okay.
New Year's resolution. I'm going to exercise. I have to exercise. I'm sorry, my little boy, my little child. I can't be with you because I have to exercise, and that's important. And you can't go out because I have to go out and exercise. And you're just going to have to, deal without having a daddy. And then, a month later, I'm so tired. I'm not going to exercise.
I guess I'll be a dad again.
Yeah, I guess I'll, do what I need to do. But it's to those who make the law is self-imposed. And in the case of the debt ceiling, it has always been more of a New Year's resolution than an actual law.
Yeah, man. So why do you think people are still so scared of it? Like why do you, it's still such a it's still such a huge talking point, especially when people summarize presidents. Like when people summarize it, they're just like, well, Clinton balanced the budget and so added this. And look, I do think, and I know you and I do have some slight disagreements here because I
disagree with that. Just kidding.
Well, I do think there's value in still pointing out and shining a light on how grossly we mismanage our financial resources. I do think there's value in pointing that out.
I agree with that.
And you can totally point that out and still also recognize that, getting all bent out of shape over these self-imposed debt ceilings is kind of nonsense when you're a currency creator. And as you point out, and as Stephanie Kelton points out, just creating currency doesn't cause inflation. Shitty politics or catastrophes cause inflation.
That's correct. Printing money causes inflation. Printing money causes inflation is no different than saying the government doing anything causes inflation. Meaning the government can't do anything because whenever the government does something, they inherently have to create money in order to do it. The only way they pay for stuff, every law has funding. Everything has funding that the Congress does because people do it in a certain way under certain contract with the government, and then they're paid with a paycheck, and that paycheck comes from created currency. Always, period. It always does. It's always created currency from a federal law, funding from a federal law. So I lost what I was saying, darn it. But I was going to say before, printing money causes inflation. So printing money causes inflation is the government can't do anything. That's what they're saying. And it comes from a misunderstanding of the myth of barter, of thinking that money is really gold. It's really backed by gold. And the money that the government puts out is just tokens for that gold. So if they put out too many tokens, but there's only so much gold in the world, then they feel like everything's going to be devalued. But it misunderstands that a million things happen in the meantime. Governments create and destroy money every second of every day. Banks create and destroy money every second of every day. A million things happen. We buy things from other countries, which means it's not spent here. If it's spent in other countries, if it's saved, if it's invested, then that means that it's not being spent. If you're not spending money, that's not going to be anything inflationary. And it also doesn't include, we subsidize the fossil fuel industry for $11 million every minute. That's not inflationary. It's horrible for other reasons, but it's not inflationary. So it all depends on it. There's just so many factors in the idea of printing money causes inflation. But it's essentially libertarian. It's essentially government stop doing stuff, because no matter what the government does, it's inherently a bad thing.
So the other thing too, when you said the word barter myth, I think it's important.
Oh yeah,
that has a lot of interpretations, and that again goes back to debt. And I didn't even realize this to this extent until I read the book. We are taught, in Econ 101 in many cases, I guess depending on who your professor is, but something you're often taught is that bartering used to just be the lay of the land, and it was done on a massive scale. And then people were like, well, we should have an easier way to do this. So boom, currency happened. That's not actually true. There was always some type of measurement to have a exchange for goods and services, or we just had a straight up, gift economy based on human needs. And bartering has always existed. Yes. But it's existed on the micro scale the way it does now. Maybe it was a little more prevalent in poorer societies, sure. But it was never this is the lay of the land. That never happened.
No major economy in the past 5,000 years, which is primarily documented in the book Debt.
Right.
No major economy in the past 5,000 years has been based on barter.
Right. It's just they sell that as a gross oversimplification on what it really means to have money in our society.
It's what it's saying is that governments emerged from markets, when the reality is that markets emerged from governments, significantly because to begin with, an army, military, and food production. Those were two, the core things that have to happen when a country first begins.
Right.
And the market just has extra capacity beyond what the government needs. And so they sell that extra capacity to each other. That's how the market comes to be. This is as documented in that book. So markets emerge from governments. Markets are an entity of the government. They don't exist without the government enforcing laws, enforcing property rights, subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. The idea that a market can exist on its own is like the idea that a television set can exist without power, like a six plug extension strip just plugged into itself. Well, it's as if that's possible.
Totally, man. And simultaneously, this idea that a market just isn't going to happen, that's just completely discounting human nature. And the reason I bring that up is because another popular myth we are taught, and I don't know if this directly bleeds into MMT, but I feel like they're cousins at the very least. We're taught this myth that marketplaces of goods and services and just societal markets cannot exist without capitalism. We're taught that at a young age, and that is complete and utter nonsense. I mean, it's to the point where people hear the word market and they get scared. They think it's like some capitalistic thing. It's not. I mean, you really think like without like a profit motive, people are just wandering around like you have a chicken and I have these green beans. I guess we just all own everything. That's not how the freaking world would ever work. And marketplaces of goods and services exist in any type of society. It's just the
Mhm.
way it's run.
Capitalism is just like hypermarkets. They're like Pakistan has
And it's
markets, but
making
they're
them
not
wasteful.
capitalism. It, Capitalism is wasteful. I mean,
It's
kind of by
completely
definition.
wasteful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of by definition. I
it
mean,
has to be.
they sell excess. They have excess inventory to sell people. I mean, they really promote the idea of buying things that are not. The Great Depression was largely because the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, and then the Roaring Twenties happened, which a lot of luxury happened, and people were pushed to buy non-critical things with credit, meaning bank loans, credit cards. I mean, I don't know what credit cards were back then, but essentially bank loans and
They
credit
were they
cards
were
and on
just on
credit.
stone tablets.
Yeah,
They were these
it
stone.
was a stone strip instead of
They
a
didn't
magnetic strip.
slide well. You cut your hands every
It was
time.
braille. You had to be blind in order to read credit cards back
They were
then.
like, we gotta do this differently. You got a little mark every time you used it.
Yeah. So during the Roaring Twenties, people bought stuff on credit that was not critical. They were pushed to do this financialization because the Federal Reserve backed them up. They were the lender of last resort, which is a good thing, which ideally is a good thing, but they abused it. They used it to go too far. And then all of a sudden, people got scared. And now all of a sudden, people had their money in these non important things. So they had the value. But now the banks were saying, I need that. You got to pay back that loan right now. And people didn't have that money, the liquid cash on hand to pay that money back. So within a month, the Great Depression happened. Roaring Twenties ended and the Great Depression happened. That was what caused the Great Depression, was all this financialization and people borrowing things, overextending themselves with borrowing. Something you had said before specifically, I was referring to that was actually the cause of the Great Depression, this excess.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean there were definitely other factors floating around too, but
That was
yeah,
a
that
major
was a big
major
one.
factor. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what do you think? You know, banks are such a big piece of this. I'm curious your thoughts. What do you think about the whole idea? I mean, do you spend a lot of time reading into public banks? Because we just got, I mean, we're breaking ground on one here in Los Angeles. And if all
Oh, I
goes
heard
as
about that.
planned, we're going to have the first, we're not the first. Some people like misinterpreted what people were saying. And we were claiming we're the first public bank in the United States. That's not true. There's a public bank in North Dakota. But what people were actually saying, we would be the first public bank in a major metropolitan city.
Hmm. I'm honestly not too familiar, but I do know some MMTers that are very, very into the idea want to promote the ideas of public banks. Some other MMTers promote the idea of a bank a bank accounts at the Federal Reserve, federal bank accounts, basically
Hmm.
creating a public option, kind of like a job guarantee, but of a bank. So creating a floor kind of a bank that gives a kind of a minimal kinds of services to people that for-profit banks will have to compete with. And I'm sure that what you're talking about is significantly related to that.
Well, with public banks, and there's a lot of people who can really talk the ins and outs better than I can. I'm not, I don't have quite as extensive an ear to the ground on that movement myself, but basically it's a way better way to kind of pool resources in a community because the public bank, instead of these excess fees or whatever, and the excess resources that any kind of bank would have. Granted, a public bank is not going to be run like Wells Fargo, but nonetheless, you're still going to have similar banking products. All those resources go back into a community instead of just to a for-profit entity, and instead of
Oh,
to oil and gas or whatever. So a public bank can really enrich a community, and can really kind of set the stage for an entire different system of doing things. I mean, we could have
mm,
collectively owned property and stuff like that. Especially at the commercial level. Things aren't going to change that quickly, but I mean, those are the type of potentials that a public bank does offer the world.
interesting. No, I'm not too familiar with it. That sounds like a really good idea.
So what else? What else should we get before we conclude today? What else should we
Mint the
cover?
coin. Mint the
Yeah, yeah,
coin.
yeah. All right, so let's go there.
Sure. Well, I want to say just briefly the debt ceiling comes from it started in the early 1900s. It wasn't called that. It's kind of like, something starts off good and then it turns bad. Like you get a prescription because you truly need it, but then you don't get off of it and it turns bad. You like addicted or whatever. So this is the kind of situation with the debt ceiling as well. In the early 1900s, they created the government had to approve the spending of hundreds of agencies, and that really was became unwieldy as the Industrial Revolution. These things got more complicated. So they delegated that approval process to the Treasury. So it was a good thing originally, but then it switched off, especially in the 1980s, to become, twisted into basically a tool to deprive the poor, but to pretend that you don't want to deprive the poor. I mean, it's just another tool, along with inflation, the boogeyman, along with the debt and the deficit. They're all just and the crowding out, and just a whole bunch of things that are all just fake tools to deprive the poor, but to deceive people into thinking that it's unfortunate but necessary. And you mostly focus that deception on those that are just over poor. Right. You don't really focus that on the poor people. You focus that on, like Pete Buttigieg says to a crowd of a whole bunch of white people. We want free college for everybody, as long as Donald Trump's kids don't get it, which is using the poor as hostages to get petty revenge on people who have even more than you.
We talked about that before.
I vaguely remember.
Yeah, I think we had that conversation before, where it's like, what a stupid, deflective, what a ridiculous scapegoat, really, quite frankly. And I despise Donald Trump as much as anyone, but that is such a ridiculous. We don't want them to have something that they would never have to worry about anyway in a billion years. So
and they would never use.
They would never use. They would never need. So let's deny poor people. Like, you're
right. Of course,
it's just this. People
middle class. Exactly. People protecting their privileges. People that think that taxes pay for stuff at the federal level. So if there's a whole bunch of people that are destitute, that they're afraid of joining, a poor neighborhood in whatever, that they think they're going to be taxed out of existence to give them free education, forgiving their debt. So they latch onto these myths in order to protect their own privilege with the false belief of the taxpayer myth. So mint the coin.
Yeah,
okay. So are you familiar at all with mint the coin?
No.
You assume you've heard of it?
I've heard of it, but
start
at the beginning.
Okay, good. There was a law in 1996 during the Clinton administration. The one sentence law, it's in my post, one sentence law that gives the mint the right to create a commemorative collectible tchotchke, a coin. It has to be made of platinum according to the law for whatever reason. That's what they wrote. There is no limit on any quality except for that it has to be made of platinum. There's no limit on its design or its shape or its size or its denomination. So it was originally intended to be for a commemorative collectible. And then in 2011 or something, a lawyer named Carlos Mucha realized that this law could be used to completely get around the debt ceiling. And this exploded. Joe Firestone, who is the person who's taught me quite a lot, he's written the only full-length book on this topic, Mint the Coin and the Debt Ceiling. There's a 2020 legal analysis by Rowan Gray, which is very, very interesting and informative. And they just ran with this. And it turns out that if you mint the coin for, say, $1 trillion, so let's say that the government they've passed laws that require $5 trillion in funding. And the debt ceiling is $4 trillion. So they pass these laws, but the debt ceiling says, oh, we can't pay for that final the final trillion on top. So what are we going to sacrifice? So the Congress and the president have to decide which of the laws that they've already passed that they're not going to pay for. They're already committed to paying that they're not going to pay for. So an important tangent related to the beginning is that when money is created by the government, debt is created alongside of it. I didn't say that it is debt. I said it's created alongside of it, selling bonds. So when you get out a bank loan, that money is debt. That's an inseparable characteristic of bank loans. It's debt to us. In the national context, when you create money, it is accompanied sometimes by debt. They sell bonds. And the definition of the national debt is the totality of those bonds, the principal. That's the definition of the national debt. It is unrelated directly to the spending itself. It is side by side. Some money does not get accompanied by national debt, does not get accompanied by bond sales. And one example is coins, pennies, nickels, anything, any coins are created and not accompanied by bond sales of the same amount. So the platinum coin, you can create any amount you want. You can create $1 trillion coin. You can create an octillion dollar coin.
So they could just create any coin they want and be like, here we go, we got it.
But here's the thing.
This is like the Mario Brothers come to life.
Oh, this is totally ridiculous, but it is legal.
Right.
But what's more ridiculous? And there's still some important stuff that I haven't said. But what's more ridiculous, creating a coin or allowing the government to default and shut down, which means that millions of government employees don't make their salaries and millions of more people don't get the services that they provide?
Do I have to pick one? I mean, they're both fucking ridiculous and they scratch each other's backs.
But
it's still like a freaking Lord of the Rings fantasy book, no matter which way you slice it, except it's not entertaining.
But the coin
sucks.
The coin will immediately end that suffering, and the president can do it. It is legal right now, and the president can do it by merely deciding to do it.
No,
so we can do something ridiculous that prevents real world suffering for millions.
No, totally. I'm with you. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's so ridiculous that
it is. It's totally ridiculous.
Works.
It's totally ridiculous. But we are, the only thing that matters to me is preventing real world suffering for millions of people. And this is a way to do it. This is a way to do it. So you create a coin for a trillion. Oh, very important. The coin can only be used for what Congress has already decided to do. The president can't go on some shopping spree. Can't just pour money into the economy, give people $10,000 checks.
So that's why Trump didn't do it. That's why Trump would have been all over this. He's like, put my face on the coin and I'm going to use my casinos. And they're like, yeah, you can't do that part. And he's like, all right, I'm not doing it.
Right. So people are misunderstanding. Oh, they create a platinum coin. The president can just give everybody health care or do whatever. No, he can't. He can only do what Congress already passed.
He can, but not with the coin. That's a separate thing.
Yeah, with the coin. I'm only talking about the coin.
Yeah, we're talking about the coin. Technically,
with the coin.
Just for everyone watching at home, yes, Joe Biden could give everyone healthcare right now via an emergency.
He could cancel all student debt. That's another. But that's separate from the coin.
That's a different topic. We're talking about the coin.
So you can create whatever size coin you want. So $1 trillion will get us through this one deficit with this one debt ceiling crisis. With my scenario of $5 trillion in spending, but the debt ceiling is 4. So create a coin for $1 trillion, doesn't increase the debt, doesn't violate the debt ceiling, and it doesn't go out into the United States, into the economy, to the regular people, but it is there to pay for what Congress already appropriated. So that solves the problem of one debt ceiling crisis. But why just stop there? Let's make it 10 trillion. Let's make a 10 trillion platinum coin. And so that money will sit in the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. The Treasury deposits it in the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve has no choice but to deposit it. The law is extremely clear, and I can give people reference to specifically where to find that. The Treasury deposits a $10 trillion. What's that?
No one's doubting you. We know.
I'm prepared. I have the source.
I'm prepared in case you think there's no way they would do this something this fucking ridiculous.
I just got pushback exactly this. So the Fed doesn't.
The Fed doesn't have. Show.
Yeah, the Fed doesn't have to
ridiculous shit all the time.
The Fed doesn't have to accept this, so this is ridiculous. And no, I actually look exactly here. So anyway, create a $10 trillion coin. Treasury deposits that at the Fed. So now $5 trillion in spending goes out. Next year, next debt ceiling crisis. Oh well, Sinema and Manchin say, oh well, we can't give things to the poor that they desperately need because of the debt ceiling that we created arbitrarily. And then we can say, no, well, you know what? We still got that coin in the bank that still has a good, 9 trillion left on it. So they can pay for stuff. The next 9 trillion can be paid for with that coin without having to deal with how you're going to pay for it because it will explode the debt. But why stop there? So it can stop the next debt ceiling crisis as well. But why stop there? Let's make it an octillion coin. And it'll just sit in the Fed. And for the rest of our lives, whenever anyone says, how are you going to pay for it? Because if we did this for the poor, it would explode the debt. No one could ever say that again. And in the words of Joe Firestone, the author of that book, a coin large enough, 100 trillion, a quadrillion, septillion, it doesn't matter. A coin that large would be a revolution because it would end deficit. It would end scaremongering, deficit debt scaremongering for the rest of our lives.
Well, you know what, Jeff? You know what I would say too. In addition to that, I think that symbolically, metaphorically, that coin already exists. It's just only Wall Street has access to it. We don't.
Arguably, yep.
I would say that coin. I mean, not literally. That coin doesn't literally exist, but I would say, metaphorically, that coin is already in existence, and it belongs to Wall Street because they get what they want when they want it, and no one ever asks questions.
That is true. That is true. And there's an important distinction between it is horrible like that because those in front of the levers of power make it horrible, and they're funded to do that by those who benefit from it, and creates a cycle of they create laws to make their horrible stuff easier and so on. There is an important difference between those in front of the levers of power are horrible and the idea of government and the institution of government. There is hope and there is possibility, and the possibility of government to provide, which MMT, that's all what MMT is all about. What is truly possible obviously can only happen when better people get in power. And the idea is to inform the public of what's possible, to give them incentive to get together and get these horrible people out. Because even if it is unlikely, or even if it is impossible to get them out and to replace them with better people or become them, it's the only option we have. We only have one government. You can't replace your government. I mean, largely speaking,
but
your government.
You can change it. I mean,
you can change your government, but it is the institution. There's only one national government of the United States. You can overthrow it.
I know, but I mean, yeah, I hear what you're saying. But I mean, if the only tools in our arsenal is electoralism or bust, we're screwed.
Oh, I agree. Done. This has nothing to do with
we're
electoralism.
Completely done.
There's nothing to do with electoralism.
But you're saying eventually you have to get better people in power.
Why does that have to be No, not necessarily. We can if we join together and demand and become ungovernable, and until they get out of office, that's a non-electoral way of doing it. I don't see any alternative to that. I don't see electoral. We do. I do.
So that's electoralism, Jeff. I
mean,
I
see
that's definitely what it is.
Laws are changeable because we made the laws. So we demand people get out. I mean, yes, electoral obviously is going to be part of it.
Right.
But electoralism is not electoralism anymore, as we both agree. Voting really is just a ruse. It's a ruse. Who's allowed to vote, whose votes are counted, the electric votes where, there's just blatant manipulation, but it's microscopic level, so we can't see it happening. I mean, it's all a joke. But no, I think I'm talking closer to revolution than electoral politics. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Where can people go to learn more?
I have those two posts. The one that's a good summary of the debt ceiling and mint the coin, and then the background post, which you showed briefly, of national debt versus personal debt. And there are links to Joe's book. There's a link to Rowan's 2020 paper. Those are easily the best sources. There's also a link to Rashida Tlaib's website that Rowan. She had the ABC Act of giving people $2,000 checks every month during the coronavirus crisis that would be paid for with $2 trillion coins. Mm-hmm. That Rowan helped write that, and they have a big website of great resources. So as far as debt ceiling and mint the coin is concerned, that's where to go.
Right on, man. And that website is activistmmt.org. Jeff, always a pleasure. Thanks for hopping in, and we'll talk to you next month.
Thank you, Ron. See you later.
All right, man. Peace.
Bye.
All right, that was Jeff Epstein, not the bad guy, the good guy, the good Jeff Epstein. And go to that website, go to activistmmt.org and read those resources extensively, because it's really interesting stuff. And I know, like, a lot of the books we've mentioned on these segments is Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton, and then David Graeber's Debt. Two heavy books. Deficit Myth is easier. That's an easier read as far as, like, it's very it's not quite as heavy, and it's written in a more casual context, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. Debt, very heavy book by David Graeber. Rest in power, David. But it's a fantastic book and very well worth it. Let me get to the chat before we bounce. Amber Lee, what's up? How are you? Yay, two of my favorite people and MMT. Thank you very much for that, Amber Lee. Mark Dansky, what's up? Here's my excess cash in support today. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that, Amber Lee, Grigo, and Mark Dansky. Thank you very much for supporting the show. Very much appreciated. Folks, that was the MMT Monday. We do this once a month on Mondays, and it's always a good time. We always have a different topic. Today's topic was national debt and the national debt ceiling that we're supposed to be so scared of, except we shouldn't be. And Jeff just explained why. He just broke it down, why that's a bunch of bullshit. So there you have it. All right. You guys know the drill. Oh, by the way, I'm going to have a big announcement tomorrow because I figured out what I'm going to do over the past few weeks. I need to do a couple things differently with all the shenanigans that went down with YouTube. I'm going to be doing a couple things differently. And tomorrow, I'm going to be making some announcements on what that means specifically, like what that means. So we're going to be breaking that down. So I'll have a lot to say tomorrow. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she's asleep on the couch. But Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace. Check out Jeff's stuff, activistmmt.org, and we'll be catching up with him again next month. And in the meantime, Lucy says meow. I say peace. Oh, wait, I forgot to. I don't have any tour dates to promote. I don't have any tour dates to promote. I was like, oh, I should say tour date. Oh, wait, I don't have any. I will. I should be on the road right now. I'm not. It makes me very sad. But there will be tour dates to promote soon. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace. Peace.